All right, I got this cap 3D printed and I got some dry bond on the inside. Jake is gonna make some of these production versions in aluminum, and you can see there will be a little place for an O-ring, but mine is gonna be the permanent version with the dry bond. So that is going to go right over here. Smack that on, and that is gonna prevent any future leaks out of that joint. And through the magic of YouTube videos, our engine is completed and is ready to go back into here. Pushed the car out of the trailer yesterday, back up onto the lift. I'm gonna cut some of these bags off. I don't know how this bag survived dragging on the ground, in the trailer, out of the trailer, in the trailer, out of the trailer a second time, but it did. So gonna cut these off, gonna push the engine into position, start lowering the car onto it and making all the connections. So again, did this in the 997 video. Any differences that I do, I'll try to document here, but check out that video for a pretty detailed reinstall. All right, this hose right here I noticed is pretty nasty right there. So I'm just gonna take this hose off and vapor hone that area to get it all cleaned up. Seems like it could cause leaky type issues if left like that. All right, this looks much better now. All right, the other prep that I'm gonna do a little differently this time is this cable here that is our emergency brake cable. These two lines right here and right here have to go tucked in behind this, and they clip in right here. So in the past I've raised the engine and then like bent the lines and tucked them in there, and it's really sketchy. It always feels like they're gonna possibly break. So this time I'm gonna try to unclip this from right here because it is a little bit flexible. Maybe I can pull this line out of the way some so I don't have to bend the other ones as much. And I'm trying to remember how I undid this before, if it's just a flathead up here. Try not to break it. Oops, something popped. Okay, I think that's it. Yep. So you just pull down that little tab and it'll unclip it so that this can be loose. And yeah, I mean, it gives me a little bit of flex to try to work with this. So I'll leave that like that before starting the engine install. All right, so I had to make sure that I fed my passenger side shifter cable under that hose because it was on top just naturally, and it started getting caught as I lowered the engine. All right, so I just figured out the easier way to get these two on the right, on the correct side of that cable. When you do loosen it like I did, you do have a lot more play. So you can bend these up this way, and then this one will bend far enough over to tuck them behind over this way instead of stretching it up like I did last time going that direction. All right, so my ultimate AOS, this elbow was catching on the bottom of here, so I had to come and push it out of the way and slowly bring it up and keep an eye on that corner there. I've got enough thread sticking through to get the bolts for the engine mount bracket on. All right, putting the transmission mounts back in, bolt through the top, nut on the bottom. These are both 13 millimeter. These go to 17 foot-pounds. These are 15 millimeter. On this side, the longer bolt goes up here, two shorter bolts down here. On the other side, all three bolts are the same size. These go to 48 foot-pounds. All right, these engine mount nuts are, all four of them are 15 millimeters, and they go to 34 foot-pounds. All right, one thing I could have done before I put this back on the car is this tube here that connects to this guy. Can't really see it. Let me zoom in. That attaches right up there to that guy. It's a little bit of a pain to get that hose clamp on, so if I would have remembered what direction it went on, I would have put it there. And the direction it runs is it just comes straight down the side, angles into him. I'm just gonna reconnect all my other hoses. Big guy goes here with this clamp. This little guy goes underneath to the red cap. My ground cable, I left the nut up here, so reattach him to the chassis. All right, here is the bottom of my coolant tank, and this little connector gets connected here. That's the stock one, but this is the one to my Ultimate AOS, so I'm gonna connect him. All right, this cable that was dangling all the way down gets clipped into here as well, and actually goes over to the transmission and plugs in over there. Our shift cable runs down here, and for us, we're gonna tighten this nut. It attaches into this bracket, and then this ball will snap into place up here. All right, here's a fairly large and sticky pain in the ass to get this grommet so that it is even on both sides. It was pretty easy to pull it through incorrectly so that the back of it also comes through, and then there's too much on the inside. So what I did was I got the back part started first, and I got it in there evenly, and then kind of pulled the front around and got the seal to line up. After knowing how to do it the first time, it wasn't as bad. My suggestion is if you get too much through, instead of trying to push it back just a little part at a time like I was doing for a long time, just push the whole thing back through, and then start with the back and pull it in, and good luck. So whilst I am up here, I'm gonna go ahead and do a couple other things. Gonna reattach to this tube here. Gonna reattach our fill tube here and lock it back in with a ring. Got our blue line reattached to this line, to the slave cylinder. My little gray clip that I broke upon removal, I never did buy a new one. So there's supposed to be a little clip right here between the nut and that piece, I guess, to keep it from backing out. And this clip I never replaced, so I just zip tied it there. Both sides of the fitting for that were 15 millimeters. And these two lines coming down, I went ahead and reattach like this, and then the rubber folds over, and then the snap folds over, and the same thing right here. So that's how they go. I have to retighten these two. The smaller one, these are also both 15 millimeters. Both sides of this one are 19 millimeter. All right, so the inside one here had this little gray clip. You can see it looks like that. They're very brittle, and it just slides in here behind the nut, and press that into place and gently hope that it does not snap. All right, that's how it should look. I had removed this tube altogether. I'm gonna go ahead and replace it now. This end connects over here. This end snaps on right up there. So here is a shot of how it routes. Connected right up there, comes down over these guys, right into those grooves, and just a pressure fit there. All right, also remember when attaching this hose that at the very top of the hose, I don't know if you can see it here. Let me see if I can get my camera up there. All right, yes, right here, this vent line hose that we connected to this little piece when we had the engine out connects to the little nipple on the top of that. So yeah, don't forget that, or you will have a vacuum leak. I had my axles completely rebuilt while they were out of the car. One of them was leaking. Now they are both super nice, and time to go back into the car. Manual calls for Optimally HT around the splines. Reading online, it seems like Permatex copper anti-seize is the same thing. It's like a high temp anti-seize, and it makes sense that you would need it because
that did not come off on my other one, and it ruined one of my axles because I could not remove it from the hub. It got heat welded on essentially. All these bolts are 8mm hex, and I'm just going to hand snug them all down before I torque them to value. I did vapor hone them. I'm reusing these bolts. They just need to be clean. The threads need to be clean, and they are gonna go to 60 foot-pounds. And I'm gonna, when I torque them down, I'm gonna do like you put on a tire, go opposite, and around. But first, just go around and get them all torqued. And if you need to rotate one so you can reach it, all you have to do is grab a wheel with your emergency brake off, and you can rotate it, and it'll rotate both sides at the same time so you can get them both lined up. Just a couple notes before torquing. Go ahead and set that, and it'll prevent them from rotating. 60 foot-pounds. And when I witness mark them, I'm going to mark the bolt and the washer thing underneath them so I can just visually inspect to see if that bolt has been backing out at all. All right, now that the car is in place and I don't have the special tool to tighten the spin-on oil filter adapter, I just use some giant adjustable pliers here and grabbed it and spun it on. Made a couple marks up there, but you know what? That'll be okay. Now I can complete the installation of this thing by connecting this from our oil filter adapter to the bearing. Following the provided instructions, I'm going to take this black fitting here and I'm going to put some thread sealant on it and attach it and tighten it to the oil filter spin-on adapter. So put some thread sealant on these threads, and you can see there's a little O-ring on it as well. So this is oriented in the correct position away from the headers. And we have our sealant on here. Just gonna start it hand tight. Tighten this down with a 12mm. This fitting is actually a 7/16, so okay. Snug him down. Next, I'm gonna take our little 90-degree adapter and attach it here. I'm just gonna do these things hand tight for right now. So just get him in place there. And then this braided hose, the 90-degree, is gonna go right here into the bearing. So this is what we installed earlier while assembling the engine. And finally, we will hand tighten this part onto the adapter. Then once everything is in place, we can go ahead and tighten them up, and you can use thread sealant that was included on these fittings as well. All right, so that is the final orientation. This is gonna be up level, so we'll not get caught on anything. And all three of these final fittings to tighten are 3/4 inch fittings. So just tighten them all down. All right, got the Napa Gold spin-on filter that came with the kit. Applied a little bit of oil around the gasket there. And the beauty of the spin-on filter adapter. All right, cleaned up our safety cable, slid him up here, put a bolt through that side, nut on this side. We're gonna tighten him up. All three bolts for the AC compressor go to 23 Newton meters. Oh God, all right, this is me from the future. Put this power steering pump reservoir thingy in before you put this thing in the car. I'll try to put this in the video around that assembly time, but before you put this frickin' pipe on, because you need this off to get that in there. So I'm gonna have to take this pipe off in place with this crap over it. And it's gonna be a pain in the ass to fit that down there. So do yourself a favor and don't forget to put that in. I had to disassemble this pipe enough to pull it forward so that I could pull that one that far forward, and then I could just barely fit that back down in there. where it belongs. You need that much room to be able to get it in. Oh my God, this thing is a pain in the ass to put on, and I've done it like 12 times already. This thing is a ginormous pain to get on and fitted onto that pipe down there. So I'm gonna try to put I can't even think anymore. This guy down there, I don't know if, it looks like there's kind of an alignment mark there with something, and maybe that's where it's supposed to line up, but it seems too far over. I don't know, I'm just gonna try it like this. All right, so from the bottom of the car, I was able to reach up there and pull the rubber boot over this guy, and I can tighten that band clamp on him. I used my previous color coatings from when I removed them to reclip all of those, attach the wires back to that ground, clip the two back in there, so all of our wiring should be back together. I broke this foam stuff when I was sitting on it doing some of this work, so I'm gonna try to jam it back in there. All right, snap that rail back into place, and in my removal video, I was wrong. You do have to unscrew those two because they are little tabs that are part of this that fit down in there and those attached to. Pulled up the mass airflow sensor, need to connect that right down there. All right, this fan down here has a little connector somewhere. Feel for loose wires. Oh, I felt it. I think I just knocked it down further. Time to reinstall these beautiful Soul catless headers and the rest of the exhaust system. Just got a little bit of my high temp gasket sealant on here, copper stuff. Got the bolts, let's put them on. My exhaust bolts are 13 millimeter and go to 17 foot-pounds. All right, for the exhaust install, I torqued the headers up first, and then I kind of lifted the whole exhaust body up into place and supported some of the weight with this. And before tightening other stuff, I gotta start the bolts through here. I got some more liquid gasket with metal gaskets in there. And then I slid the poles back up in here and got it set on top. Got the bolts just started. So those are gonna hold it in place. And then I can line these up, get these 3 bolts in at the bottom. But yeah, you need to be able to move it around to get the bolts started that go between the header and the rest of the system. All right, I'm gonna torque these up. These exhaust flanges go to 19 foot-pounds. Oops, I don't have it on. All right, these go to 19 foot-pounds, and they are 13 millimeter, at least mine are. All right, the 3 bolts holding this big support bracket on are 13 millimeter, and they are gonna go to 17 foot-pounds. Next up, we're putting this big cross member back on with these 4 15 millimeter bolts. And remember, one of the bolts that holds the cross member on goes through and also holds on this little bracket. And remember, all 4 posts where these screw in actually have like a little metal piece that is what has the threads in it that can come out. So you gotta make sure that they're in there so you have something to thread into. All right, so I got the 2 bolts started over here on the passenger side, and you will see that they probably won't line up over here on this side. They're too far apart. So I remember last time I used a ratchet strap to pull the wheels closer together, because this is part of the bracing that holds them together. So now they're too far out. So from the back of the car, I've just got one hooked around on this side of the suspension, one hooked over here somewhere. And now as I tighten it, it will draw these pieces together, get those holes lined up. All right, our bracket is lined up, and don't forget about this bracket up top.
that little pin right there, there's a hole in this bracelet that goes through, and the bolt goes through it. Then on the other side of it, we have our little connector that we have to reattach. All right. And also on top of this brace is the little black clip where our oxygen sensor clips into to keep itself out of harm's way. Let's see. There we go. Should slide right in there. All right, so those 4 bolts are going to 65 Newton meters. All right, so when I started putting this bar up here, it was interfering with the way I had this installed because it was coming out a little too far from the IMS for the IMS solution. So I just had to reposition it a little bit and re-tighten it there so it did not make contact. All right, I stuck our safety cables back through, put the nuts on this end. The nut side is a 13 millimeter, and on the back of it, you can get a 12 millimeter to hold it still, because when you tighten it, you don't want these to twist. So you hold it from the back and you tighten it from the front, and we're gonna torque them down to 23 Newton meters or 17 foot-pounds. All right, next up, anti-roll bar. I just have them in place, just just barely started these threads to get it in. Pull this link inside of here. So first we're gonna cork this up, and the tightening stage 1, so you go to 50 Newton meters, then you loosen it by 90 degrees, and then you go to stage 2, which is 65 Newton meters or 48 foot-pounds. This is the nut you're tightening. It is a 16 millimeter on the back end. And as you're tightening it, as you can see on the inside of this thread, you have to put a T27 to keep it from spinning because there's no nut on the outside to hold onto. After you use this combo to get it snug and pretty tight, it will stay there by itself. When you use a torque wrench and a regular socket to get it to 50 Newton meters. All right, so now we're gonna back it out 90 degrees and then go to 60 Newton meters. Stage 2, 65 Newton meters. Next, I'm gonna tighten these to 23 Newton meters. Next up is our V-brace, and they go to 65 Newton meters. That's this nice, pretty vapor-honed piece that goes right here. All right, 32 and 33, we're gonna put in the support plate first, and then we're gonna put in the diagonal braces. They all get torqued to the same 65 Newton meters. Oh, it's a Christmas miracle. It literally is Christmas today. But all of these just lined up nicely. It's just held in place by force right now. So there's just 2 nuts that go up here, 2 bolts that go back here, nuts, bolts, and then these, the cross, or the diagonal piece goes over it, so you always have to remember to put this on first. I usually don't.
Thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful. If you found value in the information shared, please take a moment to give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback not only encourages us, but also helps others discover content that can make a difference. Remember, every like and comment counts in building a community where we can all learn and grow together. Looking forward to seeing you soon.